Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass. Thank you for watching this Ag Forecast, brought to you by Agrible, the makers of Morning Farm Report. Our software gives growers the insights to make the best decisions possible about their operations. Well, I want to again just point out that we're offering a new service at Agrible, and if you email drift@agrible.com and you're an MFR subscriber, what we can do is we can go back and go field by field and recreate a time series of wind speed and direction and temperature, relative humidity every hour to kind of see when and where the conditions were set up that could possibly have caused some drift issues with some herbicides onto your fields. So we just want to extend that offer again to our MFR users. Just send us an email at drift@agrible.com. Okay, what we're looking at here is a map of the last 24 hours of accumulated precipitation. In my Monday video, we discussed how we're going to have potentially two separate rounds of precipitation coming through a part of the Corn Belt that have been very, very dry. The first round was a series of thunderstorms that were going through parts of South Dakota into Minnesota, and then the second round really blew up here over the last 24 hours, hitting a big chunk of Nebraska, parts of Kansas, western Iowa. A lot of locations in here saw better than a ½ inch, and then those storms slowly moved into parts of Illinois late into Wednesday night, and in early Thursday morning they were actually starting to move into Indiana. Now, big picture, what this means is if I just step this back and look over the last 10 days, we can see that a huge section of the Corn Belt received, a drink of water, here at the end of the month of July. We know there's been some major flooding issues in parts of northern Illinois, some sections of eastern Iowa, and parts of Wisconsin. And remember, parts of Wisconsin, northern Illinois have been very, very wet over the last month. But the regions we've been concerned about really stem from, call it St. Louis, back toward parts of central Illinois, then going right through this region and through here, getting into western Iowa, of course, pockets in Nebraska, and of course the Dakotas, which are still dealing with some pretty major drought. Now, these rains are really going to go a long way to help things out. In other words, they kind of stop the bleeding, if you will, in some locations, and they're going to really help, hopefully get this crop, turned around a little bit as we move into this month of August. But a lot of damage has already been done, and that's important to see here. But overall, this is a pretty decent picture to see after how dry things had been for the 20 to 25 days leading up to this in some sections of the country. Now, as we kind of move forward, what I want to show you is the way things are going to set up by the time we get into our weekend. We're going to have a pretty big shift in the overall flow. For the last, let's call it 10 days or so, we had this central U.S. ridge that really pumped in a ton of heat in through here. But this animation you've been watching, this is what the winds at the surface are going to be doing by Friday. And that's right, this clockwise flow that you see here in the center part of the country, that is the consequence of a high pressure center that's sitting right here at the surface, coming in on basically in a broad trough that's setting up in the jet stream. Now, what does this mean? Well, this means after our chances of showers and storms into this area on Thursday, really this big dominant area of high pressure means things are going to dry out and cool off somewhat. We'll take a closer look at that in just a few minutes. But we are seeing the chance for some weekend showers and storms in parts of the Dakotas, and that's kind of what I want you to see here. You see, what I'm showing you is the 24 hours of accumulated precipitation valid early Sunday morning. So after we get what we're seeing here on Thursday, that's kind of moving through the eastern Corn Belt, the weekend dries out. You can see the influence of the big high pressure center right here, but it is along this periphery that we start to see some showers and storms emerging again. And so this is not going to be widespread, this won't be heavy, but this is at least another possibility of some rain in the very, very dry parts of the Dakotas, which do need it. Now, when we kind of just step back, I want to shift and take a closer look at the European model, the latest European model that was available to me, because the GFS, I have a little bit of concern with where it's putting precipitation and its amounts. So let me just kind of point out a few things that I see here. First, all of the precip that you see right in through here, most of this in the next 10-day time period is coming on Wednesday night into Thursday morning, okay? So after that, this region is going to try to dry down for several days. Now, if you come back over here towards, Texas, Oklahoma, parts of Kansas, and Colorado, we are seeing, pretty strong monsoonal flow. And around that big high pressure center, we're going to be pushing a lot of that moisture into that region. So there is the chance over the next 10 days for some decent precipitation hitting, the panhandle region of both Oklahoma and Texas. But as we get back up into the northern Corn Belt, we do have that shot for some precipitation over the weekend. And then there's another thing coming in through around midweek, let's call it Wednesday into Thursday, that I'm trying to get an idea on exactly when and where and how much precipitation we're going to get out of this. But overall, this is kind of our bigger picture when we look at the next 10 days. And it's not looking nearly as wet as we saw over the last 10 days. So that's something to keep in mind here as we move forward. Now, let's talk about that pattern shift. Here we are looking at the flow of the jet stream early in the morning on Saturday, the 29th. We basically have a ridge pushing up, near the Bering Sea, a Gulf of Alaska trough, and then a broad ridge that's trying to set up out west. But check this out. That big dip you see there is a broad trough that's really going to be doing its best to kind of cool down the eastern Corn Belt. And watch this. As I go into Monday, you see a very similar pattern. As I go into next Thursday, let's just jump all the way forward a whole week, you can see the same thing. And so what this tells me is that this shift in the pattern as we move into August is going to be signaling a pretty big change in our temperatures, especially in the eastern part of the Corn Belt. Here's what I'm talking about. Thursday, we still are having the lingering effects of the heat we saw for the last 10 days here. We still have these heat advisories down here in the south. But watch this. Here's Thursday's temperatures. Watch what happens when I go to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. What you just saw here was that we're going to be suppressing the heat across the eastern half of the Corn Belt. In fact, across most of the Corn Belt, as the ridge establishes itself way out here in the west, that's where the heat's going to be concentrated. And so we're looking at some very pleasant temperatures, coming up here. Now, what I want to do at the end of this video is stretch this out and give you my best kind of perspective at this point as to what the weather pattern is going to look like for August. And what you've been looking at for the last few moments here is the latest European model called the ECMWF. It's 32-day average precipitation anomaly. Now, what you have to understand here is we run the model 51 separate times, and all those times are kind of averaged together, and it's picking up on the fact that we're going to see more of a pattern where a ridge sets up out west, broad trough over the east. Now, why are we seeing such cool temperatures in here? Well, a lot of this has to do with the active southwestern monsoon. We're going to be seeing a lot of cloud cover and a lot of precipitation that tends to cool things down here. But I do think that we're overdoing a little bit the cooler pattern you're seeing into this area. But what this tells me, and what I want you to take away, is that right now, there's a very low probability, given these long-range models, that we're going to be seeing extended time periods of heat stress in August. Instead, it looks as though we're going to be looking more toward average or slightly cooler than average. Now, it's always good to compare models, so I'm going to show you the latest run from the U.S. equivalent here, and this is called the CFS-V2, the Climate Forecasting System model. Now, you do see some similarities. If I kind of go back and forth here, there are a few things that kind of are similar. For example, look at the near average temperatures or slightly cooler than average temperatures we might see for the eastern Corn Belt. Also, same pattern setting up here over the Four Corners region. One difference, though, is that the CFS does bring some warmer than average temperatures into the northern part of the Corn Belt, which may push all the way into parts of Iowa. But notice these are not strong anomalies. And so when you kind of put the two things into aggregate, I think what you need to be taking away from this is what I said a few moments ago. August is not right now signaling any long duration, heat spells at this point. It's actually looking more to be closer to average. But I think what we really want to focus on in August is what's going on with precipitation. And this is where we really have to look closely at these longer term models. Let's go back to the European model. This is, again, the forecast for the next 32 days. You can see the active southwestern monsoon, but where they have the kind of apex of that ridge, we do see some drier weather that could be hitting parts of southern Canada, getting into Montana, and then parts of North Dakota. But it's in through this region that I'm starting to look at some signals that may potentially suggest that we might see some drier weather in through this area. Now, maybe the northwest flow, once this ridge gets established, puts more of the precipitation into parts of Wisconsin, Michigan, getting over here to the northeast. And possibly, and we'll have to just watch how this sets up for the second, third, and fourth week of August, possibly leaving, the main part of the Corn Belt near average to potentially drier than average. And the reason why I say that has to deal with this map. You see, this is, again, the CFS-V2's version of this. And it suggests that we could see the wetter pattern from parts of Minnesota through Wisconsin, maybe parts of the eastern Corn Belt. But it is also picking up on that, near average to potentially drier than average. Now remember, we're talking about some long-range forecasting, and these models are not known for being, super accurate. They're just there to give us a picture. So what I want you to kind of hear me say here is that while I do believe that most of the month of August, especially the first few weeks of the month, are going to carry the near average to possibly slightly cooler than average temperatures for a lot of the Corn Belt, it also looks as though that the month of August has a very, very low probability of being as wet as August 2016. And why that is important is you got to remember, right now we're way up on soybean acres. August 2016 was very wet. It helped those very tall beans produce a lot of pods and a whole lot of beans on that top canopy. August 2017 is not giving me those clear signals that we could have, those same wet conditions in through this area. But it's all about where the ridge establishes itself once we get into that second week. So which means every week and every time I put one of these videos together, we're going to be keeping on trying to figure out where that ridge is going to be, because it will be crucial to see where the wet pattern will establish itself on that northwest flow and where we could see some drier weather. So I know that's a lot of uncertainty, but you know what? That's what happens with weather when we analyze it out this far. I hope you found this stuff useful though, and I hope you look forward to our video on Monday. To get Morning Farm Report for your operations, complete with a daily email that shows a snapshot of your field conditions each morning, go to morningfarmreport.com. Sign up for that free account. Full grower accounts are free if you sign up for our Sustainable Yield program or for our growers who work with ADM merchandisers. Thanks again for watching. Hope you look forward to that Monday video.